And before that, it was years of doing work and then coming home being tired and in pain and not doing anything that I would want to do. So it's literally like years of cabin fever, but that's all, has to change. And, be a pain in the ass if the whole world kind of did something crazy, and then that's pretty much how the trend of my experience went. I can't really allow that. So something, whatever it is that's happening now personally and possibly collectively, I want to go for distance if I can, but I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm be able to do that. I want to.
I bet you can.
Little by little.
Hey guys, I just want to interject. I just turned on record, not for any purpose, but just so you know, I didn't want to be certain.
Okay, I just started recording my voice. I sometimes do that. I'll almost like a chess game where I'll press record as I say something and then stop it, because I have ideas that flow through 24/7, and part of what I'm supposed to do, it's literally supposed to be my job. And kind of technically it's starting to become that now. Although I could have taken a much faster route to making that happen, but I'm in a weird mental situation with that, because the people that do that are complete weirdos for the most part. I've seen them. I saw direct experience, not talking shit, and so yeah.
Will you say more about what the weird part is? You're talking about people who take this stuff seriously enough that they make it their job are weirdos?
They take deals.
Deals, yeah. Okay. So I'm assuming you don't have a deal and you're choosing to go on your own.
There's one operative done. I don't want to talk about it. Don't email me. Don't do this. I'm going that way. And he was released with a pension plan. There's a main corporation that runs the finances post-service for people involved in the operations. If one wants, upon their release, they have access to a pension plan. I was in a state of mind where basically I didn't really want to be released, because it's weird trying, it's a good thing, but it's like weird, it's like kind of like thin ice type area, because no one's ever actually released. It just means you're going into a different phase of how you're going to be utilized. And I was rebelling, and so to sign a paper that says I'm going to get such and such amount of money for such and such amount of time for the people that I know that are trying to save humanity, but sometimes have to commit mass murder in soft kill methods in certain ways, makes me feel implicated, even if I've been involved in utilized in other ways that are, just as horrifying. And so, of course, I threw that off, and then because of certain ways that I went about doing that, I get, certain protocols like treatment and issues and health issues and things like that, which is basically standard protocol. And so that's my deal, is that I get my ass kicked for it. It's you just one way or the other. They have to control the situation. And so I'm stubborn, so I get the ass kicked version most of the time.
I'm integrating that.
Information-wise, as far as what I can and can't say, I say whatever is truthful, and if there's something I can say and it'll fuck people's heads up, I won't say it, because I know I've seen people go insane. Okay, I can say a lot of shit that makes people go like, "Wow, what is this guy talking about?" Not even close to what's going on. They're right there. They eat people. They're everywhere. They run the show. All right, that's what's going on. I could just sit here and say that the whole time and get killed naming names, but it is what it is. But then as well, that's not the plan for liberation. That they do that every few years. Somebody comes out and says, "Hey, we saw them doing that." That person disappears. Nothing happens. Nobody cares. The plan for liberation is so that people can become aware of what's going on. 3 phases are pretty much outlining it: corruption, advanced technology, cloning, how it's changed things, genetic operations, advanced technology, and advancing our mind to understand how the technology can match the universe and what the universe is, and it's basically merging with technology. And then the cosmic intelligence and these changes to the timeline and things like that. We have to become intelligent enough, not in a machine way, but in a spiritual way, where the unconscious and the conscious becomes less at a desynchronization, and we know ourselves. That's liberation. All the other stuff is just a game that they play. It's a game they play, and they have fun tearing people in half, whoever wants to stand in front of the train. Now, is that going to change everything? I know that some people are not going to be able to resist what's coming, which is part of the issue. Sorry for cutting you off, but I also know that the finality of the situation, liberation, is when all human souls are released from what is basically a temporal, technical matrix, a prison of electromagnetic energy that takes the mind and puts them into these false realities. That every last soul must be liberated, otherwise it doesn't stop. Sorry for...
I want to say that I'm doing my best to keep up with where you're going with this stuff. It's obvious to you and me both, I'm sure, and Bibi as well, that much of what you're saying isn't provable. There's no provability to it, and yet somehow there's I have a bullshit meter inside me or something that you're not pegging my bullshit meter. Now that means I'm paying attention. Some stuff is like, blowing my mind, but the basic bottom line thing is I don't think you're just crazy and spouting nonsense. Okay. Now that's a really cool place to be. Even though it's not provable, that doesn't mean it's not true either, right? So here's my question. How can Bibi and I talked a couple times before we got you, and one of the things that, occupied most of our conversation was how can we best serve him? How can we best serve you? And helping spread the knowledge so that other people can use their BS meter, their ability for discernment, and choose to research and look things up, because you're dropping these breadcrumbs, okay? You're like over here, over there. You don't put them in a straight line, okay? They're kind of all over the place, which is a really cool way. Bibi and I like that, okay?
I do want to add...
so they're all over the place. But one of the questions that, came up to us, and I'm trying to put in proper form to you right now, is that kind of organic drink from a fire hose approach. Like you just gave us a little tiny sample of fire hose just then, okay? And I like it. And I've heard like there wasn't much new in that particular thing, and the repetition clarifies for me, because I decided you're not just full of it, okay? You're saying things that you've seen and feel to be true, and therefore, I'm open to that. Just let's see where this goes. What about all the people? So here's Bibi and I, and we're kind of getting it, the randomness. And what about folks who just can't even cope with that because it's not A, B, C? Pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. If it's not delivered that way, they're just checking out. Is it important for them to get the message? If somehow the message got, just a little more orderly, and that meant more people were reading or listening or watching or whatever, would that serve you, or would that be not helpful? That was a big...
Right,
yeah.
And I just would like to put into that recipe of the question, there are those who, like me, is becoming aware of Aug. Aug, your material has initiated this domino effect of remembrances, the plugs, and where the plugs are placed, unplugging and plugging in, and rearranging the circuit board, so to speak. So there's that level. I'm remembering so much, and just in a matter of a couple of months now. So there's also that level of a group of people who are involved with your information. Then you've got people who are accessing it on a completely nonlinear level, which is where I began. And then there are those who are so drawn to the material, but I read the comments. I love reading the comments to see where people are at. I spend a lot of time doing that, not in the last week as much as I would have liked, but there are those who go, what? Wait, what? And they still keep coming back. Okay, I've put my ingredients in.
It's always good to use a metaphor now. We're in a painting. The restriction on the conceptualization of what is only perception. It's a perceptual boundary. What's actually happening is beyond what we see in terms of multiplicities. There's 10 different conversations happening right now, and you use slightly different words, and I use slightly different words, but the concepts, the meaning, the underlying fundamental cause and effect are similar. So we're like in a metaphor machine. But all I'm saying is that the linear mind begins to grasp that when we begin to use these generalizations that act as archetypical cutouts for meaning. And it's easier that, and then you see the people who struggle are like, not that, like what is exactly happening. And if they plug up to one of these machines, or if they go through an awakening process, those are the people that have to be a little bit sedated and calmed and cooled, and medics come out and stuff, because your mind fractures. It's really nothing's happening. We're in a temporal flux. And so there's different approaches to handling the situation. One is everything can be proven, but secret groups handle that. Surface operatives do not handle that. If a person is awakened before their time, it's the only way to kill a being is to show them too much before they're ready. That's one of the methods for trying to control this reality, and it's actually, anyway. And so that's one of the first and main things that goes on, and everyone who goes to the awakening doesn't really cross their mind, because the method of the awakening is to show the person more than they can handle and basically kill the person on the spot, but to use technology and healing methods, serums, etc., to keep them alive. So it's like forcing someone through a time tunnel until they see everything. And the brain, connected to the DNA and consciousness, the ego is it's like an attribute of limited, refined awareness of the moment that we perceive through the sensory system. When you're shown things that are outside, behind the curtain, beyond the veil, the brain wants to die. It tries to kill the body. It tries to shut off. These like spikes go up the central nervous system and tries to disrupt the system. So it's really weird, just a process. This whole thing is a process. What you said as a domino effect, that's basically the role individuals have. Discernment, direct ability, basically, I can't think of the word, like direction, and I mean as far as making it presentable, the appropriation of information, sensibility, linearity, organization, believability, and the caustic effect of some of this information. All that has to tie in. We can make things easier for people, but the truth is that I'm not saying we let them suffer. It's part of the ritual. It is technically, but whichever way people want to do that, they're for hurting people or for waking people up. The idea is we can try all we want, and it's not going to work for those who aren't ready to awaken, and those who are going to listen to these things and they have some type of connection, like you say, remembering, so on and so forth. All they'll need is somebody saying, it's happening, you're not crazy, this world is crazy, don't doubt yourself, you can do it. And it's just a choice. It's just an encouragement for people to make the choice to see the truth, whatever the truth may be, just that we're being lied to. And, as far as how, that's kind of like just explaining a little bit about the game, basically, which is how the society is managed from behind the scenes. And it's basically a perceptual system within a perceptual matrix, within a simulation, within like a social psychological schema that's handled by groups that literally advertise the next phase of human interaction and control society like a chessboard. So everything that's happening is according to that. However, with organic effort, basically not even effort, but introduction or addition, basically if you care about people, or you care about who you're speaking with, or whoever you're interacting with, and you seek to enable them to protect themselves, to know themselves, and to benefit in some way, then all you have to do is attempt that, and it will begin to unfold on its own.
Wow.
You know, as far as more specifics, is that, well, one, the remembrances and the circuitry. So these are reality anchors. It's meant to be this way. As this information reaches people and it changes their minds, behind the scenes groups are altering the DNA of people who are 100%, everybody is basically, Michael calls it chipping, that we're all chipped. There's frequency resonators, just like a governor on a car, in everyone. It stops people from fully waking up. You call it the ego mind, the mind virus, the enslavement protocol, whatever it is, the crux, the whole fiasco of certain isms and so on. And so because someone comes to the surface level and says, hey, you can look over here, that enables on the energetic level someone to help that natural peeling effect of the unconscious information where everything is known, because everybody already has access to it. So it's an anchor. This information acts as an anchor. Extra-dimensional awareness and these extra-dimensional teams can then go in and provide background support. Other than that, basically reducing that caustic effect in ways that are, assisting in what we can predict is going to be shocking to people, which I just made a post, which is the exact opposite of everything that we're talking about here. But again, check it out. That's one of the crew members. They don't like to be called crew members because it sounds like a mechanic of some sort, and we're cars that they're working on. We're not cars, they're not crew members. But these are important individuals that are interacting. You'll see the post. It's a PDF from the military, and I can't really even explain it. You'll see it. We're parcels in a war that was initiated by banking families from a spiritual level against the human population after we passed through an alternate dimensional gateway from what people call heaven and the fall of man and so on and so forth. So this group lays it out in a 76-page PDF in military terms, so in formatting, so it's like, this and this, that, and whatever. And so, but again, for everyone who needs to, everyone wants to know, there it is. This is just an exemplification. Everyone who doesn't want to know, they're going to be shocked and overwhelmed, and they're going to throw it out. They're going to delete it from their hard drive probably and wipe it and go to bed so that they forget about it. Everyone that isn't ready to know but has some inkling of knowing something, they're going to attack it and try and make fun of it and make it go away, make the spooky stuff go away by throwing insults at it. But that's a process that has to be undergone, and that's what happens. And these groups are prepared for seeing that, where people basically transform into these possessed things and go through craziness. That's the unconscious, the darkness within coming out of them. So part of that reaction of giving them too much and that caustic effect of burning their mind is intended, is part of the purpose. The primary, directive, the prime directive, as Riled Boom has begun to talk about, which is really great the way he says some things, is that you, don't interfere in terms of forcing people. That's where somebody's peeling back them layers on their own. All right, well, you go give them a boost. You can, if you peel it off, technically you're turning time up. You're not actually changing something that wasn't there in the first place. And B, if somebody is injured, damaged, traumatized, suicidal, whatever, from that, that's no-go. That's illegal. That's against the law. And also note how the people who pervert that, their goal is to get people to commit suicide. They're to break every law, to alter the whole timeline until they get whatever they want. So there's those who follow the law and those who don't. And that might give you more of the perception or the perspective that I have, which is that it's part of the game, but we can take it to another level. And really, if we get better at it, it's just going to make it burn worse. But it's going to have an acceleration effect where it'll get over it in a day. Maybe you don't understand how that will work, but that's the intended purpose. The better we get at that, the more the same thing's going to happen in a much more extravagant manner, and more people will come out and be like, this is really happening.
Okay, so that means there's a question that's inescapable, which is if we ramp it up, and that sounds like there's a wave, there's pressure, negative pressure behind the wave, essentially, right? So if we push, it's also going to pull. And is there a time in conventional, in the conventional sense, is there time pressure to do it, or is it okay to take a really relaxed, measured, like just let it organically get out there versus driving, trying to add a zero to the views? When I first started Log, there were only 100 people paying attention to the video. Now there's 5,000 in a couple of days. So does that need to be 50,000? And does it need to be 50,000, in a month from now? Or is that too much? That's what I'm trying to discern from you. And I'm okay with whatever. That's easy to go with whatever makes the most sense. And I think I understood 90% of what you just said, which is, we can do that, and that'll have an effect. And the effect is not necessarily known to us 100% ahead of time. So is there time pressure or not?
And you understand what I'm saying. I just have a flamboyant way of saying it, where it's like the general meaning that you would think it is, and then it kind of curves back around to recurve upon itself. And then it's like, no, it's just reinforming what it really was. And it's just a curvy way of saying, yeah. And then the other aspect is really weird, but I'll just come out and say it, which is that I've been in a type of delay, frozen, just putting the information out rather than organizing and so on and so forth. Because really, if people read it all and get a fire hose or a waterfall of information, eventually it's going to have an effect or stick.
Yeah.
The idea is that these years are supposed to be the years that big changes occur that will never happen again. That we're at a peak level of tension for the civilization, to the point where if something is going to happen, whatever does happen will have a maximal effect. And it's really weird. I don't know if you've seen the talk with Patty. She was a part of the operations. I met her in 2010. However you want to address her. Actually,
Patty Broussard.
Yeah, he identifies as a he, but I say whatever. And I do have my reservations of, the right and manipulated way to do things, or however. But at this point, for instance, some of the operatives and some of the people who are involved, that's the least of the worries as far as being altered or something like that. And that sounds weird me saying it that way, but you'll see. But the idea is that they remember. Silk F remembers. I met her. I met everybody. You'll get it soon enough. Because that's the way the technology works. Tachyon field, put you in the center of it, hook your brain through a supercomputer, connect the supercomputer to quantum tunneling diodes. They run your thoughts, a simulation faster than light. Information from the future trickles backwards because it's like a strobe light in a tire. It looks like it's moving backwards. It's an effect. It's not real. It's just a cartoon. And you can see down to the second what's about to happen in the future. But you need big power to literally pull energy from that. And it's making a wave propagation that's literally rippling out from the present moment. And, there's a system of basically entraining that ripple to see what's happening out there across the pond before it happens now, and sending that information to us. And then if they set up a big gateway to do that and keep it open, the people in the future can look back and see it and send specific information to specific groups. And that's how these dark groups have been controlling the show and seeing, whacking people before they do certain things, let alone everybody's chip. And so basically everything what I'm saying is, you show me something that means in 2010 I first watched it. It's called Second Sight, and it drives most people crazy, but I tend to enjoy the little pleasures in life. And so, but as I was saying, I was told 2006 things would amp up because of, I was told and I saw, because of that device system, which is part of the Ouroboros. just weird. Because basically the concept, the explanation is that if that's possible, they're like, you can't see the future. You know, don't be stupid, boy. We're in a hypercube matrix. It's a computer that's planning out all our events before we do it. You can't actually see the future. We're in a false reality. That's how that works. That's what they concluded. That, you know, at first it's like, this is amazing. It really is true. And from our perspective, it's true. That's what the future is. But the idea is that it only works because the electrons, atoms, you know, time space is an illusion. And we're plugged into it through brain tissue, and really everything of all time that is to happen, I'm on a tangent here, but everything of all time that is to happen already happened. And we're just in this delay, this organic temporal delay, where it seems to happen only to us once our brain chemicals explode with that firework array of sensory perception connected to the now moment of physicality. That's the illusion. But we're in an acceleration period, 2016, celebrity cloning. You've seen, if you will, some of the information coming to the public, and the political stuff going on, and then supposed to be big events. Last time things happened that you wouldn't believe, and it just means that this time around something is going to happen, but it'll probably be better than last time. But either I'm not going to be here anymore, or many things are going to change based upon what happens in this fall or the next couple of years, or combined. That's basically the level of change involved.
So do you want to put gasoline on the fire, or do you want to keep a fire extinguisher handy, or are you like, you know, what's...
Remember how they, so as far as I go, that process happens where the team goes in the background, starts peeling back the layers, and it just happens. And everybody that's involved in this is doing that. As long as they are on their toes and still doing stuff, instead of saying, yeah, look at this person, and just poking each other in the eyes and slapping each other's butt, and they're completely distracted. Like, what are you doing? You're literally a high level, you know, part of an elite squad. They're tickling each other's toes, playing, you know, mind games, which is an infection, a parasitic infection. The computer makes it seem like it's a Teletubby show, and they're watching the world burn, having ego battles, and that gets you on the list. But the idea is, I am the gasoline. We all are. We're expendable. We're not meant to stay and you know, roast marshmallows. So, you know, for 10 years, I put that off from 2010, actually 6-7 years, excuse me. And if you heard stuff that I've said, that's nothing compared to what went on in those 7 years. I already went to the public before. This has all already happened before, and very advanced technology is in play, and it's just a fun labyrinth, if you will. But again, it's not fun labyrinth. It's a prison, and only because people with technology are using it this way. So, you know, hiding from the fire doesn't work. It just gets bigger and chases me in a dark alley. And so I confronted it, and it backed up. And now we're at this interplay where I have to do something, and cooling it down at the risk of losing, you know, a large portion of the population isn't an option. And as well, it's pretty much mental. You know, if something physical doesn't happen, the big quantum collapse, which is one of the big, it's the nuke, okay? It's not a fireball, it's a temporal wave of degradation that kind of shifts the literal synchronization or angular momentum of consciousness, and everybody goes into disarray and goes insane. They've been holding that off for 40, 50, 60 years. Armageddon began years ago, and they've been using resets to keep the population normalized. And they release radiation, they invent bath salts, they release crack and you know, legal weed that fucks your head up, and they say that's why everybody's crazy. And they all shit on TV and these butt-shaking videos.
I've seen it all.
And they say, but that's why. But if we were all in a white room porridge, everybody would be going insane just the same, because it's part of an effect of the DNA from these experiments. And so
but we don't get another reset. Is that correct? We don't get another reset. That's not happening again.
Right. The idea is that there's not another reset because of the unique nature of the technology used and the way the universe works. as if there's I said this before, an easy way to describe things, and that's usually how these debriefings go. They come up with these metaphors to make it easy to understand, and it's how they understood it in the first place anyway with their experiments. And which is that it's like a computer, the universe is a computer, and there is a maximal amount of RAM. Each time there's a reset, for that reset to be a reset, and for the next run to be the next run, the fact of that reset occurring has to be stored somewhere in the background memory. If that gets deleted, then how do you know it's a reset? It's just a do-over at that point. And so since there's, I think it was 6 resets that we've gone, there has to be 6 ISO images of the entire hard drive kept in background memory, which also reduces the amount of information and energy that the population can use, because everybody's struggling now to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, half of the background processing of 100% of the population, except for the people who have protection, that use technology and the serums and stuff like that to avoid that, half their unconscious mind is full of 6 civilization destructions, 6 ages and epochs of destruction and cycles of, Shiva and rebirth, and or Kali and rebirth, Kali Yuga, and so people are distracted from that. But that is, so the way it's also described is that, and I kind of came up with this part, but everybody seemed to be appreciative of it, that because it can't happen again, they look and say, there's no reset. The technology is not working. We cannot insert a point that acts as the buffer and sends us back because it's failing and dropping in energy at levels every time we try to insert that, and give us that buffer zone where we know shit's about to hit the fan and everybody just wakes up 30 years ago. And so the idea is that we're either going to disappear forever, and if we do, we have to get past this reset. We have to get past this loop in order to secure ourselves in the future. The weird temporal shit loopback system, it requires our future presence to make the past stabilized. So it means if we don't get past that point, the whole past unzips and as if it never was. It goes away like dust in the wind. It blows away. But the point is, if that's happening, then what is happening right now, if that happens, isn't happening. This is a dream. It's going to disappear, and we're going to forget it all forever, and it's never going to be. And so the idea is, look into how you feel, and do you feel like an automaton, a cartoon character, or something that's not, not really here? And so the other option is that it's not going to work to reset. We have no more time, no more resets, but you can't actually destroy something that is unlimited. So this simply means that the only other option is that we roll over the next, what would be the destruction point, and a portion of the civilization, or a sizable, majority, which is unlikely, survives into what is the golden age, or whatever you want to call it. And I say it's unlikely, but don't take it like it's a zombie apocalypse or anything, because those were the previous ages. But the idea is that it won't be absolute destruction, because that happens fast, and no one sees it coming. And the point that we see this coming now, we're altering time to the point where we're using up that last bit of RAM that we have to finalize the blueprint, the ISO image in this copy, not from the past, in this copy, so that by the time we hit the gate, everything transfers over, and we roll over and get imprinted on the other side. And in that one, all the energy systems are reversed. So as much as there is suffering here, there is a neutralization of the suffering. And the goal is as well to go into neutrality instead of flip-flopping, because that means we'll flip-flop every 1,000 years or so, which is a plan of some of the dark factions to go through a war and liberation, if you will, every few thousand years.
Aug, I've got a quick question for you. How much does one's individual DNA template factor into being able to navigate organically on one's own or with another group of souls to get to that neutralized place, or even just a more, the place where we really want to be is what I'm trying to say. How much does the DNA factor into that?
There's another thing that happens. Everybody will get that at certain points where you see what's going to happen the night before you see the next day. That's part of the system I was involved in. But I thought of this answer, earlier in the day, and so there's a physical layer and there's an energetic layer. The soul and the DNA connects those that are unified on the energetic layer. We think it's physicality, but it's just a portion of it. Everything is here forever, and the idea is that it's like an aquarium with water coloring. Up there's water, where there's water, and then we're made out of watercolor. Or that's what's the soul. It's these essences, these vibrant bands of frequency and color, all connected together. And down here it's that, but encased within this body system, matrix system, where it's pretty much like organic rope toys. So on that other side, it's all about energy. For people to hold together, they have to equalize their energy so that it's not wasting energy, burning it off, and they can move into a calm, collected state, which can then exist within that aquarium, that water, that floating, realm of storage for, a very long time, hundreds of thousands of years. So then you have the souls down here going wild, shooting place up, having fun with drugs and sexual activity, abusing the body. And it's really not even about any of those things. It's just the fact that when the person goes through that, their energy is going to go like this, which is also why some of these dark factions do all of that every night. And they try and keep their energy just like that, because they're saying when we die, we're going to be stone. You can't move us. We're going to be around forever. And but the guy down the street doing that, running around on bath salts or whatever, I use that metaphor already, his energy is doing this. And so it means if you took that from the soul and put it into that water bed, it's going to disappear. It's going to disperse and dissolve and spread out so thin that he's only going to last for a few minutes. And which is also why he's doing that, because he has no idea what's coming, because he's young and hasn't developed that experience. Whereas you find a yogi, and you look at their energy and how crazy they are and the wildness, and they're really sitting there, the meteor crashing, and he's just pondering what the effect might be and how this is liberation now. Their energy is still, nothing's happening. So he leaves, he goes on his water balloon or his hot air balloon trip into the watery above, and he's just sitting there forever. He comes down 10,000 years later, he's exactly the same. Remembers the whole thing, comes in with all his memory. You can't scare him, you can't weird him out, he's already there. Same thing with the gurus of the sadhus of the certain East places and certain African places where they have like the bones through their nose and they drink their urine and put feces in their dreads and stuff. They're doing the crazy, that's what the dark factions do. They're doing the craziest stuff and their energy is just normal to them. So then these parasite entities come down and try and tweak them out and just pull energy off of them, and they go, no, I'm weirder than you. You can't feed on me. I live forever. You're temporary to me. And of course the parasite's, well, shit, all right, leave them alone. It doesn't work. But there's the line where it's like a police officer, he has the gun, he can save, but he goes to F shit up. I don't know why I'm speaking like that. And so if the same with the dark faction, they have all the power, they have all that money, they have all the knowledge, they know what to do and what not to do. A lot of them go nuts, and these parasites become part of their soul. They eat their soul. And so it's the same thing with some of these gurus. And so the idea is that everyone has to move into a form of unity, and not everyone, but your soul group. And it's connected to DNA, but it's as well a spiritual ontology, to the point where people who think alike are literally a part of a similar soul group. And people are at war with each other where they could be unified cohesively. They're separated in fragments, and oftentimes people who are like one another are spread out and put against each other. And this is pretty much by design. And so all that is a way to break apart, just like the family, break apart the family, introduce all this debauchery, make everything reverse. That's the physical. That's to make the same thing occur on the mirror, reversed realm or reflection of the spiritual domain. And so that the soul groups don't stick together, and they weaken them, and then you just got like these 3 to 12 families that are literally immortal, pure memory beings that rule, and they literally rule heaven and hell. They're like, screw them, we do what we want. So it's a debauchery of beyond anything that could be imagined. But the idea is that energy determines what happens, the energy levels. Outward motion, lack of control, lack of stability wastes energy. It's literally just like efficiency with circuitry. That if there's a lack of insulation or an improper, wiring that results in a bad connection of amperage between two systems, and now a thing is heating up and the energy is being wasted and what it was not intended for, okay? Those are methods to destroy the spiritual family, the soul cohesion. And that was what I had earlier, which is pretty much it's what happens. It basically, you can go up in a craft and go into the watery above if you wanted to, and it's really weird, but that's how it works. And so yeah, I think that answered your question. And I know it answered it like at an abstraction, but
here's a question.
On many levels, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Would it help? Would it be, so we do want to, you're the gasoline, and we want to take a highly distilled version of the gasoline and throw it on the fire, right? Because why not? Is that a simple?
Yeah, you just connected the two. Your mind did it for you. That we don't want big black smoke burning off, where it's just polluting everything and it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, but other stuff is catching on fire and it's hard to breathe and everything smells. And we can actually have like the camping stoves where it's just a pure clean burn, nothing even, you can't even smell, it's just pure heat, pure flame, very refined. And so that's kind of what I was hinting at before, that we can't stop the burn, but we can clean it up, we can clarify it.
Okay. A form of alchemy, actually, the way I'm seeing it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
That's what they've been doing this whole time.
Okay, so that, I love that. And so distilling the fuel and focusing, getting the lean to rich ratio just right so that we have a hot blue flame instead of a crazy bomb going off. That's what we want. Now, that's metaphoric. Would it help if you just brought up an element of proof, right? So if there's a bunch of people running around on the planet who can't wrap their head around any of this because it's too far out, either they're mind virus affected or, ignorant or willfully avoiding it. Okay, whatever, it doesn't matter why, right? That's up to them. They get their choice. They have a choice to make. But would provability help refine the flame to help, the process move it along? Would it be, if you could say, take a journalist type who wasn't, super mainstream, but on the edge of this, interested, open enough, like they'd already said, in their own minds, anti-gravitic craft might be feasible, and they'd read up on the physics of that and tried to figure it out and wrap their head around it, but it's not provable. If you could, or somebody else could take one of them and show them the real deal, thus that they have provability, would that refine the flame? Would that help the process? Or is that impossible because blank? Fill in the blank for me.
Well, nothing's impossible. It's just, are you prepared to deal with the consequences?
Okay, right. So I don't mean possible. I meant useful, really. And if I said possible, that was a slip of the tongue. But is it
even in use? If the consequences do not appreciate the use, then they'll make them disappear. So I've done this before. I used to have fun with it. Of course, certain agencies don't find it hilarious that they have to stitch aspects of the society back together because we're ahead of schedule. Most of that will be handled behind the scenes. Exposure. You're talking about the unveiling. You're talking about the exposure of corruption, even in the neutral aspect of just advanced technology being hidden, and how to enable people to see what is possible through pretty much these technological advancements and experimentation. As far as the closest you're going to want to get, so that's phase 3. There's going to be a big showdown, which is hopefully played right. which
And
apparently
that's not now. Phase 3 is not now. Is that correct?
Can that be coming in September? Is that what you've been recently referring to?
It could be. No one on the surface level is allowed to have the exact information.
Right.
Anybody
Okay.
that does is walking around underground.
Mhm.
And so when I was young, I would do that. I found it cute because the point is we're in a huge system. Your mind is a gateway. Your thoughts are keys to unlocking doors to different realities. I used to go out into the woods and wonder hard enough if somebody was out there with me, and then shit would fucking appear and yell at me, or fly through the sky. And there are a few friends that won't talk about certain times and situations ever again. You're muted. And eventually I got a little bit of kickback for that because it's against protocol. And some of those things eat people. And so clearly dumbass 16-year-old me thinking it's quaint, still having fun, but I realize now there's protocol for a reason. And we're covered, the planet's covered with stuff. And there's civilizations everywhere. And so the point is, that's coming, that's happening. What the other aspect, to certain things I can just throw out there and put it in real view. You're going holographic on us. The idea is that I'm gonna preface this with saying, actually, I was briefed on this particular thing. I was briefed on everything. Every single word you've heard here, I've heard before. Everybody was sat around in a circle and judged what was going to happen, or give an outline. And so, what I was really talking about is if somebody was in my vicinity and we went out into a little dark corner field and looked up, and then sooner or later there'd be a crew going by, and I can show you videos of a guy that just goes out and sets up his night vision camera, and nobody sees anything that they're not supposed to see, that isn't checked off on the list and is like approved, because his consciousness interacting in this system where their appearance is on his grid of thoughts, it monitors, watch everything, or systems monitor everything, so it's predicted, it's perceived, so everything is okayed at first. But the idea is it's easy to do that, and I've done it quite recently. But the other aspect of that is that some groups plan invasions, some groups abduct people, some groups stitch timelines together. It's in a way child's play for what's really happening. If something like that was to happen, it would also degrade what this is about. The other aspect that I've bounced around with is that if I prove it to people, then I'm of no use. Because if I'm here to test people, and they're in the back, they're going, all right, he's saying this, who's going to understand it? And if I ever go and force them to see it, then their check marks become pointless now. It's like, okay, well, experiment's over, and the experiment is the best way to do it, to say it. But that's the point, that the suffering, the lack of belief, that's defining who's been paying attention for the past 10,000 years and who's an automaton that doesn't carry a soul signature and would have to literally be forced to interact and wake up and say, oh yeah, this is clearly a bullshit reality where everything is based upon lies and oppression and destruction. Why didn't I think of that before? To tell somebody that is one thing. To force them to see it, even if you're forcing them to agree with it by proving it, is another thing entirely. Because this is a system where they're looking to find out who's been paying attention, who's awakening. The easiest way to say it is, if it's done for the person, the timeline collapses. If we get to that point in the future that we need to secure the past, but people from the future did it so that we're in this carfunkel backwards time loop now, that's an auto reset. Because your future you can't come and say, hey, play the sax. That's what you always wanted to do. What happened the first time you went, when there was no future you yet? You can't have the future be the first causal imprint of what made you who you are. You have to decide it. So they play the devil, and they throw their false flags and their lies and their oppression and this, that, and the other, people have to catch on their own. It's not to say that there are people using real terrorist attacks, real vampiric attitudes, and really crushing people to death. It's not to say that doesn't really exist. Of course it does. But the people who are actually handling this process, managing it, if handling is too corrupt a term, it's that people are not supposed to be helped. They're supposed to be pushed until they wake up on their own and realize they're already immortal. You can't die. It's part of a matrix that somebody built for us.
Can I just say that I had, come across this concept and been around it and contemplated it for a long time. But when I started paying attention to your material, I really got and integrated the concept that we are in a completely inverted system. It tied into why I play with hummingbirds. They can fly upside down and backwards, and they're the only creature in this realm that can do so. And there is such significance to the inversion factor. And that just keeps bringing me back to a place of grokking it, the timeline term, which I love.
So what timeline term? You're breaking up a little bit.
Robert A. Heinlein, Robert A. Heinlein, whoops, I need to plug in, wrote Stranger in a Strange Land, and to grok something, G-R-O-K. I love that word. It encompasses so much meaning in it.
That's the human condition, or a portion of it.
I'm going to turn my video off, guys, to save bandwidth here so the conversation can continue.
I have a clarifying question. Previously, you said we would have these ISO images basically stored so that the next that everything would roll over, right? That we can restore what's happening now. You used to use the word everything. Did you mean everything and everyone?
Yeah, objects take like a flash drive. They can make the whole universe disappear, and somebody can stick in a flash drive and it all gets rebuilt again. Consciousness is what takes up a lot of data, and for the people who are sleeping, it's like 2 flash drives. It's like the soul energy, because the soul energy is an unbroken strand of awareness from the beginning of time. And it stretches all the way through. It's all the coalescence or the collective memory of every experience. And that, if you can imagine, is compounded, compiled data from the entire realm. Because everything that experiences, or this person experiences, is connected to that perceptual system, which is connected to every data point in the realm, like it's a huge multidimensional clock with billions of trillions of gears. And again, the soul leading into the spirit is the information that's far removed from this realm and is basically non-local. And so it means, it can be anchored, anchored, channeled, and brought in here, but then the system has to be tinkered with just right to get the soul to merge, otherwise it'll reject it. And we're in this overlay labyrinth again, which is apparently what some timelines degraded into. They tried to reset it, and they ended up with a bunch of monkey head people walking around, sniffing each other's asses and not having the past 10,000 years of human civilization. Like their minds were wiped and then didn't come back. And it just meant the souls didn't merge because there was too many variables that were off in the holographic overlay, which is literally a realm projected out of these powerful supercomputer systems, which is bouncing off of some type of essence that is the actual embodiment of the person, and then everything from there is manifested out of our mind. Meaning our brain is creating reality, which is easy, but as well, it's like stupid or vague or something.
Is our DNA? It would occur to me then that our DNA itself would have the capacity to be a storage device. Is that the case?
That's exactly what the DNA is. It's the unbroken strand. The soul is thought to be in the DNA. If you imbibe in somebody's DNA, you're taking their soul, or their power and their knowledge, or you're stitching yourself into their timeline, their afterlife, watery family thing, and sucking the power out of that realm into this realm so that you live for the many times that they would be alive if you took all their lives and put them together, which is how some of these people have been living for thousands of years off of thousands of people. And now you can go get it done. If you got a few $1,000s to blow, you can go to a place in California and have them shoot you full of infant blood or 10-year-old blood, or I think it's a little bit older than that, but I'm sure if you know the right guy, it's whatever, and it's legal at that point. I'm not talking about these, if it's not legal, shit, you don't gotta ask anybody, just go grab somebody. I shouldn't be really going into this direction. But
the degradation, and because I live in Southern California, way above the Hollywood sign, but the degradation here is so palpable, and it's just becoming, so visible, it's astounding to me. But yeah, what you say, yep.
It's an experiment. That the different time zones are different experimental universes or dimensions. They're literally different timelines. That's an experiment. The East Coast is an experiment. The Midwest is an experiment. The South is an experiment. The North is an experiment. Different factions run each place. It's not just like different people got together. No, there's different rulers, different overlords. Weird. Yeah. That's the easy version of the explanation. There's times where there's teams of individuals that these are actual crews. They're maintenance crews. They have to make sure when people travel from one lane to the other that their minds are wiped of the transfer point in between, a millisecond in between the timelines where everything and anything can happen. Otherwise, they go back into monkey smelling each other's butt mode, and that higher level awareness shuts off because it's completely discontinuous. It's literally like one of those, like, not slasher, like David Lynch films where it's just like one scene and then it cuts over and it's like the corner of it and it's like the shadow of the chair or something. It's completely disconnected and it's a horror show. But they wipe memories, bump up, buffer the next few seconds, stitch the two experiences together, and you thought you flew from one end to the other, or you thought you drove over the line or whatever it is, and it's all normal. Or you have a really weird day, and it's that one day out the year, it's just like, I just walked through a wall or something, or that guy just disappeared right in front of me. And then that person goes to bed, and the next day it never existed. They don't remember it. It's all solved. It's all healed. That happens 24/7. This whole thing is a big stitch. It's a stitch job.
Amazing. Yeah.
And now I distracted myself.
Have you talked about that idea of the time zones themselves or the regions of the country being distinct experiments? Have you talked about that?
Once with, I think maybe 3 times. Once with Lisa. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it, I think not as much with Patty. And then it must have been once or twice on my own because I don't have, recollection of with other people because I, usually remember how they react to it, which is how memory is beautiful and it works, that it doesn't remember yourself, it remembers other people. But the idea is the DNA is a storage device. It's a harmonic band of frequencies, or a harmony of them, multiple frequencies that are entangled over one another, like a vibratory spectrum emitted from one central device, like a TV emitter, a radio frequency emitter, and they're all folded neatly over each other in frequencies. And you get this overlay until you get this singular harmonic frequency coalescence, which is so diverse and so unique. Anytime there is one with that many data points, it's the only one like it in all of time, in all of space, in all of universe. It's a signature, it's a name, it's a scent. And everyone gets that so that they can be them and no one else can be them. It's literally an encryption. They said, this is just a way to connect it, the true creator stitched everyone up or sealed everyone up with their own DNA, because if I try to be you, I'll have to crack the code of your DNA now. And I'll have to hire a supercomputer the size of a house that can also entrain my mind and pick up what my intentions are, because to, the complexity behind that, and then, or to transfer it to me. Basically, it's something that can read my DNA and then read your DNA and allow me to rearrange and take and manipulate what I want. And apparently they found it. But as well, apparently it's the good group that found it first, and they locked everything deeply down so that whoever does then, just like the blockchain with Bitcoin, whoever does trying to hack it, well, now it's going to show up on the radar that somebody's trying to mess with the code. And so weird stuff. That's how this place is controlled. somebody could do something bad, something evil. How do we handle that? All right, get 10 guys, have them figure out how to do that all day, the best, better than any person, and now we figure that out and basically map that into the system, into the human domain, and whenever some terror group or some crazy, mother effer starts to do that, we'll know how to handle it because we'll be better than them. Sounds horrifying, but in all the simulations where they didn't do that and create this buffer of evil, it just ran amok. Eventually that led to like a satanic overtaking where these things come out of the underground bases and just, all right, it's our party time now. And this is prophesied for thousands of years. So they're avoiding that, which is strange, but it's a mind game. They parallel. And it's like, well, wait, are we making it happen? Like, is this is how it leads into that, or is this how we avoid it? It's parallel until you overcome it. You make it what you want it to be.
Aug, when you're with other operatives in the bases, do you name the creator? And if so, how do you name it? The original creator? Is that the way it's spoken about?
It's a touchy subject. Everything at this point, there's even saying what's going on now is one of the things you're not supposed to talk about. Ongoing situations. The main thing now is positive healing. Okay. But as well, time is all mixed up. I can't really talk about that. But as far as in the past, in these group situations, training facilities, secret societies, schools, members, families, etc. Everything down to everything is known, but everything is knowledge. I'm going to go back to the DNA thing too, but everything is knowledge. They're the smartest people on the planet. So if I use the word original, and I used it in a wrong way, everybody would literally turn and look at you like you're mentally retarded, and it would continue in that trend until you stop using words that made no sense. The language we use here, and it's not like you did that, because I use the same way, but the idea is that for there to be an original, there has to be a time where something began. It has to be the first, meaning there's something after that. For there to be a true God or creator, then it would have to have never began, because if it began, then something created it. And so that right there kind of outlines how touchy it is for people who are the smartest people on the planet, and their people is not a term to describe humans. It's a term to describe automatons that are designed by a computer system. It's like saying a citizen. Citizen is not a human. It's a legal term. You know this.
Got it.
And so weird thing. Forgot who I'm talking to. And so it goes like that forever, and they'll just run me in circles. But I learned a lot. But the idea is that as well, it's people who are smartest on the planet and people who are extremely smart, and a lot of them are assholes. So it's like, trying to one-up each other or whatever. So things that are sensitive, you basically don't talk about it a lot. And then there's groups that claim to want to be God, or be the groups that are here to overtake God's presence, to overtake the one, to basically take the throne. And every time they say that, they're like, it's not going to work. We're all going to die in the end. But we get to do whatever we want. And you have to do the good thing. You can't do that, or you lose all your power. We have all our power from being evil. You get all your power. It's a big game, big show. But the idea is that the rest of the knowledge, where that goes and comes from, is powerful. A lot of it has to do with what is called source, but there's an agenda behind source. As far as if we go to source right now, that means we all died. We're all gone forever. If we all right now go to source, we're never coming back. When someone goes to source, it means they never come back. It means they've merged with the ultimate. Meaning, if you're an immortal, your goal is to never go to source. It's evil. It's the fake God. If you're, if somebody's doing the dark faction stuff, or whatever you want to call it, basically it's trying to be the ego that survives for all time, which knows that it can't survive, because if it's defined as an ego, it has to have a beginning and an end. So there's a pathway to that, and all this is defined. There's a pathway to what's the path to God, what's the path to the false archon, and which is when it's the path to the false archon, you get the power of God, but you can't use it to do what God does. You can only use it to separate yourself further. Mm-hmm. And eventually they created an alternate dimension where there is no God. You can do whatever you want, and there are no repercussions. but eventually it means everything goes down the drain because there's no ontological, intellectual backing of the substance of consciousness, which holds everything in a framework of larger being, of a larger I am being, that we're literally, by being observational elements, we're a part of a larger observational element that we're encased or embodied within, that we don't know fully and can never actually know fully, but we are a part of and a portion of. And by respecting ourselves as that and one another, we become more aware of that and more capable of living in the light of that, and therefore achieving and experiencing what we want, which is, it's like free lunch or something. Whereas if you are working in the opposite of that, everything must be gained through friction. It's like everything is a scam, that everyone is designed to compete, and is designed to compete in order to war with one another. And this is a breakdown of the two different species of people, or humans. And one's human, one's not human. That's the whole point. But they look the same. One has a organic soul matrix that comes from the before time. One was created as a secondary event that is viewed as an invasion of the original human race, which again, original doesn't work for that, but it does because apparently what we call humans in the human race is act of war. That was the embodiment that people have here is not the real embodiment. It's not, this isn't reality. The true humanity, the true even man, and the true living beings are eternal, and the embodiment is just like a refraction, a reflection of light coming off of a prism and bouncing around in an array of reflectors. It can change. You turn this knob there, to now you get a whole different color spectrum. We're stuck, like it's concreted in, like it's frozen. Because somebody greased it. They took the gears that were greased and made them rust over, and they removed all of the reflectors, if not half of them. So it's just like this frozen cross-looking thing where it's supposed to be so much more. I mean, we only have a few different options to go through, and then once we get to them, they shoot us back, and it just replays over and over again. A very broken down, mundane, limited experience here. Like there's walls, and then it temporally, literally resets. And so it's again about power level, that the true essence of all is simply the most powerful one of all existence, and even existence. It goes back to people, humanity, time, and space, meaning to exist means that you can not exist. It's an essence. It's a property of a living physical being, and it's the same with being. To be means you cannot be, whereas simply a living essence is like a flavor that just is. If you don't have the flavor, technically it's not there for you, but it doesn't mean it died. It doesn't mean if you're no longer seeing, you're colorblind. It doesn't mean the colors are actually gone. They're just an idea. That's truly what humans are supposed to be. A fleeting idea that can be anything and express itself in a variety of different ways. Once we become these defined mechanistic values, that's when somebody can slowly replace them and work one after another out, and you can't switch the whole thing out. But what happens if you replace one portion, then the other portion, and the other portion, and then the whole body and the nose is the only thing that was left, and then they switch the nose out? Is it the same being anymore? Technically, no. But the point is, if we're a soul essence, you can do whatever. You can become a rock if you want to. It's not going to change anything. You're everywhere. You're everything, because you're actually nothing. And that's
so. What I just want to say, just to clarify for myself, what I hear you saying is,
my way of saying it. It's not like I have.
Yeah, I get it. We get that. Yeah, but it's all a process of it's a densification and a solidification process. So if we're in this realm, there's no possible means to access the meaning, quote unquote, of source or God, creator. It's just beyond our capacity, our capability, because we're locked into the chip, so to speak, which is creating this whole thing, the way it wants us to see, which reminds me of a question I've been wanting to ask you, Aug. Are you familiar with the work of Randy Green?
I know the name. Is it the lady?
She's a former psychotherapist from originally Denmark, very, very smart woman, who decided that she wanted to see what her DNA template looked like. And she came to the realization that she needed to get a theology degree as well as go as far as she could in learning computer programming and the language of coding. And she's doing some very interesting work. In the theology degree, she was able to maintain her agnostic, neutral viewpoint because she wanted to see the entire picture. And she's been connecting a lot of dots. So you might want to check her out. She's got some interesting stuff out there.
You spell her name with an I, Randy with an I?
Randy, R-A-N-D-I, Green. And she is developing a group of people to do what appears to me to be very similar to what you talk about in terms of working with a soul group here to get to that coherency of a singular thought and intention in the highest format possible to achieve, right?
And yeah, I haven't looked into her. I've seen her, you know, as soon as it becomes, eventually it'll come around. I wanted to say so the DNA is programming, computer programming, and information technology. Like that's basically the mapping of the DNA. It's like a code, and again, it's like an encryption to your consciousness, and as well, it's your memory. DNA is memory. The junk DNA is memory. It's the memory of where you've been in this matrix. And once you get your memory, you have the combined power level of all the different versions of you, which are right now fragmented because they're actually happening right now. I know this seems like the last one in the sense that we're you know, we've come so far through history and development. We're just as much we're at the beginning of, you know, I don't know what people call caveman time or something like that, which never existed. It's a different reality. It's all happening simultaneously. But why is it happening now that we just see it one way? And it's because we're seeing it in that fragmentation, and that is, like you said, control. So there. Well, first, the DNA storage. So there's a guy from Above Top Secret. His name was Astro. He was a mod. When he got up and left, I think it was 2014. He left one post and was just like, "All right, see you guys." And so he was an operative. And it's weird. He describes how the technology is used. I don't know if I'll release this. Eventually, I'm going to release it publicly, but this took a while in the debriefing, awakening to get to this point because it's basically the pinnacle of what's going on. The brain acts as a supercomputer. Consciousness, in terms of the soul and DNA, it can process the amount of information of thousands of lives simultaneously, all at once. It's a fractal light-based computer system, harmonics, like vacuum tubes. And so the craft use brains to fly. They use brains to map out their trajectory because if they're moving at near light speed, supercomputers aren't even fast enough. And there has to be something that can process here, there, and where it might be in case of so-and-so event happening, and if then, you know, programmed possibilities simultaneously, which is what your brain and mind and soul is doing based upon your life, where you come from and where you might go, what might happen, and all the different aspects of this realm. Your brain is the supercomputer system that's controlling your trajectory through time space or hyperspace. And this also leads now to the aspect of and so more with the DNA, it can be used. You can take the DNA of bacteria of an animal and program it to do a certain thing. You can make created beings, chimera, and create life. And it's the same when it doesn't have the soul complexity. It's a viral life form because it's purely technological. It has an in and an out and a target and a goal basically, and a release or a response for that it does something to get some value out of it. And so when they make humans like that, they're like vampires. It's weird. And so and then they mix that DNA with animal DNA, and you get these like walking animals. And so, but they have no connection to source, or what we would call source, which is the complete, basically on the other side of the universe. So your string of DNA goes from the beginning of time to beyond time. That's your connection to source. If that is broken, then you're just all of a sudden here on an island of, like persona. It's like there's no rules. It's like there's no boundaries. There's no moral compass at that point. So I don't know if you have something to say, but that's how DNA is basically can be used and treated literally like a big storage device, like a thumbnail drive. And again, even then, Astro, I don't go too far into the proof thing, but I will note when it's like, look, this was trending, it was weird conspiracy stuff, but then now look at them releasing this news. I do that a lot because I know what they're doing. I know I've briefed on it. I know who's doing it, or how it's happening. And so Astro did that in 2014. More so recently, within 2015, 2016, they released the news, and then I can't remember what university, that they can take a drop of DNA or DNA suspended in a fluid, and I think I can't remember what the amount was. It was something like petabytes of information, where it would have been like 10,000 or 50,000 DVDs or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And they figured out how to store information in DNA format and then use computers to read the DNA, to decode it. And it's not viable right now because the technology to read DNA is very, very expensive. However, there's that soft disclosure where they're telling you that, say we were an underground base and we had unlimited funds, we then develop a computer system that can do that can decode, code, extract, produce. Okay, well, guess what? These vats hold all the memory of every experience and database on Earth. And we have 100 vats for each copy, so that if one degrades, we have all you need is a drop. You need a drop out of each one. Right? So it's like uncorruptible memory, because if it corrupts, you can just heal it. You stitch it back over. It has a redundancy, a high redundancy failsafe, which is crazy.
Wow.
Are we reliving, are we redoing, or are we just doing Atlantis?
So just like the earlier versions of your fractal fragmented form are happening right now, the same thing is happening right there. And for those that are at the power level of like the metaphors, we had a conversation this way, but in the other reality we talked about it this way, the same concepts, different words. Right now, same civilization, different methods, different people, different colors, same experimentation, same fundamental lessons being played out. Same exact thing is happening, and that's how it works. I have to say more, but what were you going to say, Blair?
Thanks for that bit about Astro and the DNA. I just heard about that myself yesterday. And I think it was a Canadian university, and the downside of the storage DNA as a storage medium was the expense and the speed. So it was permanent and perfect, but it was very slow to code or decode, and that was the problem. So he likened it to, it's not going to be used as RAM, but it's going to be more like long-term storage. So you might put your photos there, but not your Word document that you're working on this week. That was his, basic feed it through NPR kind of metaphor. But it's out there.
Just a wonderful way to self-disclose information.
So do you have specific information that still needs soft disclosure, or have you already, because sometimes you're looping and adding layers, and do you have big stuff that you need to get to in the near term?
Because of the previously discussed reasons for what's going on now, why there's like a delay and basically what is to come and what happened in the previous timeline, the only thing I could do is cause a riot with releasing the information that is to come, which is literally what we're trying to avoid.
Got it.
All I can say is the people in the highest political arenas, it's been switched up in recent times where they weren't included in some of the information, and now they are, to the point where they see all of it going on. And if the recent high political person, if you saw the look on their face in one of the second meetings with the news media after being introduced to all of this, the look on their face told everything that was going on. That once you put your hand on the book, you get initiated, and you only get a certain amount of free thoughts a day, and the rest is controlled by a supercomputer. And so everything now is about avoiding that revival of the beast technology, which has apparently been shut off for the first time in a long time, and it jumps from dimension to dimension. So, but that's the other thing. They're using brains and DNA to propagate themselves through time with this technology. Well, that's how the parasite got here, by piggybacking on the DNA of lower dimensionally oriented individuals. And so what you were saying, though, Bibi, is that the mind can't see the wholeness because it's based upon prioritizing through categorization and difference or contrast. Wholeness is source is exactly that, which is indivisible. What the mind can see and how the mind operates is exactly that which is divisible and conceptualized. So basically, it's as if there is a chip controlling our soul's awareness and the ability to see where we are coming from and where we are going. So that brain is acting as a chip. It's organic. It's a wet computer chip. It's a wet work computer chip, which is why wet works. Yeah. Well, there's certain names, and some of the mind control technology is wet, or I think there are other words with dry, and then another one for the different type of plasma technology, and the stuff that interacts with the organic hobbity human elements is wet, because we're wet, we're water based, we're goopy, but it's very efficient. It doesn't overheat very easily because it's wet. It's fast, and but if you lose your wetness because you accidentally cracked your CPU open, well, you're done. And so, but it can be rebuilt. If you have a serum, it can be injected in, and everything grows back in a few seconds, which is the craziest shit I've ever seen. And it's quite painful. And so that lack of access, it's simply the truth. Just being able to access the truth. And there's a workaround for that, which is pretty much, like I said, the guru, borderline heaven. Your thing is hell. It's borderline knowing the truth and being insane. Having no mind or losing your mind, or clear mind, completely crystal clear mind. Like there's nothing there, but it's because what you're viewing out, the lens is so perfectly clear, versus the lens broke and fell out years ago. You're just looking at air, and whatever you're seeing is floaters on your eyeball, and you're calling it the universe. But that's the idea, that letting go of it, saying, I don't get it, that's what you get, and figuring out how to work that into knowing that you can't get it physically or biologically, mentally, but you can get it through the pure awareness. That's the trick. It's like a what is that that cult from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the Slack, I can't remember what it was called, cult of Slack or something like that, where you basically you lazy roll your way into enlightenment, and push your ego mind out and just like tell it to go take a hike, and eventually it just works. But that's the idea. It's borderline losing control, borderline letting go of control to gain control of that which can be controlled, because you can't actually control it through that means. It's a paradox, but it works.
Question. I'm very fascinated with the relationship between the DNA and the chip that you've talked about. And I don't know, it just occurs to me that as one, is the DNA actually being activated, or parts of it, as a lot of writing and speakers and teachers have been putting out there? And two, if that does happen, wouldn't it make sense that different timelines are reactivated, and would that bring into this realm certain degraded forms that were a problem in the past? And the part of that question is, how much is that controlled if that is happening? And I'll stop.
It is controlled to the degree it can be controlled without destroying everything. Everyone's got their limits. The society, the people who run the show, half of it is knowing the boundary and just playing your cards right. If not, that's the whole of it, meaning they don't do anything. They just look and observe, and their groups pay attention to what's going on, and they say, this is most likely to occur. And so they say, all right, tell everybody this is what we're about to do. And then everybody, they pump their chest out and say, this is what we're going to do. What are you going to do? And then people naturally do what was going to occur anyway. And everybody who falls for it says, oh my gosh, they have all this power. Look what they did. And through every event in history, they just jump ahead of the gun because they're smart enough to do that. And everybody thinks they're running the show. And they're just laughing in the background. They have no power whatsoever. It's just an illusion. It's a magic show. But with that, what that means is that there is a natural progression where it's just happening anyway. It can't really be avoided, but it can be delayed and distorted. And these are like the loop cycles that we go into, where it's like a few years ago, we were just, as a species, a civilization, we were just going through the same thing. It's like everybody had the same focus. There was tension, there was buildup, and then people are like going to focus on some type of new idea where it's like, oh, we're going to be spiritual or awake now or whatever it is. Like you realize it's a bunch of BS. And then they redeploy one of the old tactics, and everybody's caught up in the same bullshit again, doing the same things, running each other over in cars and fighting over nonsense. And it's like literally they can't see it. They literally cannot see that's the same thing happening over and over again. But what it means is that if it goes on far enough, eventually that won't work, and the next phase rolls out. And so DNA activation, DNA is the soul, is the fractal with the connection through that fragmentation of what the mind is, the ego. DNA is timelines. If you have access to multiple timelines, it's because your DNA is capable of processing that much information simultaneously. DNA is a fractal harmonic relevance to the total informational access of that which is, meaning we're all at a proportion of activation. And when it increases in activation, your DNA is handling an amount of information that is proportionally relative to the maximal amount of information in the universe. It's a universe thing. Your DNA is a dimensional reflection of the universe. And your consciousness is at that point as well, meaning it's a weird thing, but it's an experience. It's like basically the way they describe it, so they mapped out in earlier times, people are going to wake up in these ways, and this is going to happen. Okay, so we're going to insert these things and give people a run for their money. They did this so much that these cycles created themselves to such a degree that what we do when we wake up is create parts of the universe. And so they created these exoplanets, the planets in the outer edges of the solar system, which are bubbles that appeared in time-space because of the insertion of programs and schema into the society. And that's why they say certain planets control certain ritualistic themes in the culture and the species. And they say some planets are going to disappear, or some are appearing, or some are sliding through, or some are no longer planets. It's the map of the collective mind in this realm. It's a big brain. We're in a big brain. But the point is, it's not a game. It's literally like a big brain. If we all thought one day that this is going to happen, the whole thing could go and flip upside down. It's real. The power is real. And so the idea is that our mind, our DNA, and our consciousness in frequency is related to these astrotheological maps of the universe. And that when you're at a certain level of awareness and interaction with yourself or your DNA or your soul memory, you're interacting with different frequency layers of the universe, which are mapped out on these false reality grids, these broken cosmic mirrors, as the Kabbalah with as a planet, or as a frequency realm. I don't want to start naming them off, but these balls that are basically mapped out in a tree of life. And the goal is to see it all, or to go up to the very top and to the bottom, so you can get the maximal perception. But as well, the majority of them were invented and are part of a false reality construct and they were invented by people playing with people's minds to such a degree that they were basically stitched into the DNA, these false realities, which invented aspects of this projected realm that certain tribes knew appeared, and they said this one came through and crashed into this one, and there was a spiritual war where these beings came down as a result and placed dominion over these people. And it's all metaphors, but it's also realistic, because the metaphor and the reality are the same thing. Reality is the myth. We think there is a reality that then we forgot and it became myth, and now we talk about the myth like it's reality, but they're two different things. It's the same thing. If you go back far enough, you see weird things happening, shimmering lights, and a guy walks out that way, and why is it happening like that? Because everybody forgot. In the next 10,000 years, everybody forgets. And the timeline you come from, you don't know what happened, so now all you have access to is the myth timeline. Meaning that's your reality now. And that's how they can control what people know, and control timelines, and control the actual relevance of the universe and the realm. The weird thing is, well, what happens when you get 100% of your DNA and all the bullshit is exposed? What's there? It's something far beyond comprehension. It goes back to that source idea where it's literally like, all it is mind-blowing. And it's a rush. It's a mind-blowing experience. And it's usually based upon truth, harmony, self-awareness, compassion, free will, and like creativity, knowledge. That it doesn't go outside that realm, because when it does, you made it up. It's like seeing a shadow in a world of light. It's because you're blocking out some of the light and you're looking behind yourself. That's not what's actually there. You're only going forward. Which means there's basically what is 100% activated. There's a human civilization over there just waiting, looking at everybody going, what are they doing? They still don't understand. They're making time go as they go. They're in a ship where their minds are projecting into hyperspace and determining where they go in time. And they're just over there waiting. It's like, wow.
I love that. You're just so adept at these metaphorical analogies in terms of making it real. From my experience, I get it. What occurs to me is that something or someone really needs a good spanking,
Yeah, even ourselves for not doing it sooner.
Totally. Yeah.
If you feel like you want to tell somebody you love them, or you tell somebody to go smack themselves in the face, and we don't, we're lying to ourselves. And you don't have to say it in a harsh way, because the point is, a lot of times we want to avoid a confrontation, or we want to avoid making it worse or something. But that's kind of where the metaphor comes in, because you don't have to literally do it in a way that produces confrontation. You just have to tell the truth and tell how you feel and express yourself. And if everybody did that, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. And you can see in your own life, if you don't do that, it sucks. You feel bad, like you're your own worst enemy if you love somebody and you don't tell them, or because that's where I'm like trying to be wordy, because it's like, if you hate somebody and you don't tell them, well, you don't have to tell them. Eventually they'll get it. You just get out of their life. But if they're, you feel like you're being abused, basically, and you're allowing somebody to do that and feed off of you and you permit it, it's like the opposite of love, but it's not hate. It's like, it's self-degradation. So we have to stand up for ourselves, and really that's all this time is about. That everybody's like, we can make sense, but it's not about throwing rocks and Molotov bottles. It's about throwing words and truth, and not insult words like hitting people over the head with a rubber chicken, but heartfelt truth and true expression. Which is
I need to interject a question. Is it okay to interrupt you right there?